All right. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. My name is Wes. I'm a freelance illustrator and comic book artist. And here I've got my new friend, Arud Jack
Yo,
from Instagram.
from
Can you give us give us a brief rundown of your history in illustration? What do you do?
yeah, I mean, I've been drawing on everything since I was a kid. It was, my escape. I grew up in a very uh small boony town where all you had to do was, just seek out media because there was nothing else to do.
Mhm.
So yeah, my dad introduced me to a lot, comics, movies, theater, stuff like that. So that has always been a part of me, and along with that came video games, and yeah, just to summarize, yeah, I've just been drawing ever since, and yeah, I can give a short answer, I can give a long answer, or a long-winded answer, but I think I'll just say, yeah, I went to school. At first, I wanted to do illustration. Uh, and I've always been like kind of self-taught, and not to knock the school
Yeah.
system or whatever, but I kind of realized that I was only improving and would continue to improve by learning the way I did, which was from observation from other artists and like trying to mimic what they did and learn their techniques and all that. And I not like, again, not to toot my own horn, not out of arrogance, I just knew that if I was going to be spending all this money to go to school, like I'd want to kind of invest in a skill that I think would open a little bit more doors. So I think smartly I switched to animation, where I learned
Mhm.
how to, because I mean, you must know, as like a comic artist, in a way, it's like, what is animation but like the next kind of step of a comic book? It's storyboarding. It's the same exact thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, with me, it was just like, okay, I'll do animation, and then if I ever want to fall back with illustration or comics, like, it's all backwards compatible. So, yeah, that's how I got my start. I just recently turned 27. I graduated when I was 20 in 2019. So yeah, like, sorry, can't. I'm
Yeah.
an art guy, not a math guy. So yeah, just
Mhm.
yeah, it's been a few years, but I mean, obviously with the pandemic hitting, it's in some ways, as horrible as this sounds, in some ways it has aided my line of work, where a lot of people are
Mhm.
seeking entertainment and animation, and out of safety, like, it's so much easier to, shoot an animated music video or work on an animated thing than it is to get a bunch of people together, and for COVID's sake, for the risk of it. But yeah, to, I hope, answer your base question, I've always
Mhm.
drawn. One thing led to another, and I decided to go into animation, and I haven't looked back ever since. And yeah, that's where I come from.
Yeah, I can see the old school animation influences in your work. Like it's I can tell that you look at a lot of stuff like Samurai Jack.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of get a Ren and Stimpy's kind of vibe from your work a little bit.
It's funny. I never actually watched Ren and Stimpy, but you're not the only
Really?
person to tell
Okay.
me that. I mean, I definitely have like a very I don't know, just like a gritty, expressive. I love
Yeah.
drawing. Anger and yearning are my two favorite emotions to draw, and it's just like, if that comes through comedy or just like this kind of hard edged, like, can we swear on this? I want to be,
Go for it. Say
yeah,
whatever you want to say.
just like, fuck the world, like that kind of shit, like
Yeah.
Bad Religion, punk rock stuff. But yeah, like, yeah, no, Gendy Tartakovsky, the creator of Samurai Jack, was definitely a big influence, and I think like animation more as a medium, like, it's a very broad spectrum, but it's like for a medium for silent storytelling and just cinema, really, to get off my, Apple box there. But I think it's an amazing thing, and I it can be for adults, it can be for everyone. You can tell stuff from Looney Tunes to Samurai Jack to like anything in between, like Peter Chung with Eon Flux and really
Yeah.
experimental stuff, which I love. Like, um, yeah, but you're gonna notice I'm gonna rant a lot, and I go on tangents, and it's yeah, that's part of it. But yeah, just when people write it off as a genre, specifically
Mhm.
for kids. Look, kids love animation. I was a kid, I loved animation, but if you call it a genre, it's that's what's led to the weird landscape we have today, where a lot of shows are getting cut, and a lot of animators are getting laid off, and I mainly blame the bureaucratic bigwigs at the top of a
Mhm.
lot of these corporations. But anyway, bleeding heart aside, yeah, I like animation and whatever your base question was. Sorry, I drifted away from. Yeah,
It's cool,
um,
man.
it,
So
it's
you're a fan of Aeon Flux? Me
I
too.
am. Yeah,
I'm a huge fan.
yeah, no, so I to basically, like, I grew up in a very interesting way where, I mean, I thank a lot from my older brother. He's 13 years older than me. And
Mhm.
then my father, uh, even though I'm still like in my mid 20s, 27, my father uh, was a lot older. He was born like in the 50s. So I kind of had this weird, like, my, the media I was getting trickled down to me was like kind of like this boomer and like
Mhm.
Gen X, kind of like Gen Z,
Mhm.
well, not Gen Z, Gen X, um, type stuff getting trickled down. So I got everything from like being absorbed into like Adult Swim when I was way too young. Like my brother took me to like the Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie, when I was like 11, uh,
Yeah.
and all this crap. But it just, yeah, and exposed me to like certain animes before a lot of other people saw them, because he would get like these bootleg like burned DVDs. But then my dad would also show me like a lot of older stuff, like Lawrence of Arabia is like my favorite movie, and like just like really old, like classic things that I don't think a lot of people from my age have really
Mhm.
experienced, and it's kind of made me like, um, like, I'm grateful for it, because it's given me this very eclectic taste to like seek out the more weird, bizarre stuff that just isn't in like the spotlight. And Eon Flex is like a prime example of like, this is what American adult animation like should be. Like, there's no should for animation can be anything, but like the fact that we don't have like more stuff like that, I'm just
Yeah.
like the closest stuff maybe in maturity and tone is like Gendy Tartakovsky's like Primal, in like violence and stuff like that, and silent storytelling. But
Mhm.
in terms of that like weird eccentricity, like just crazy,
Mhm. Mhm.
bizarre shit, like uh I don't know. I often lament things that I wasn't really around for, and like Liquid TV, MTV, stuff like that. Is definitely like something I want more of, and yeah,
Mhm.
so that's my Aeon
Yeah,
Flux.
he's got kind of like this David Lynch kind of
Mm,
vibe going on. Like he's taking these abstract concepts. I actually just took a class with him as the instructor
nice.
on Project City .tv. I don't know if you're aware of that website, but it's
I'm not. I know his
okay.
Patreon, and that he was offering some stuff on his Patreon, like, but yeah, no, I'm not familiar with that site.
You got to check it. You got to check it out. So it's basically just like a bunch of animators, and they're teaching like storyboarding and different roles and whatnot, and like how to like set up your own intellectual property and whatnot. But he just did one, which was like a 12-week course, um, where it was like just techniques of storytelling, and uh, he's brilliant, man. Like
No,
the way that he the way that he cuts down like everybody's favorite movies, like he just shits on everybody's
yeah,
on modern movies in general. Like he
yeah,
has such a bone to pick with it, and when you hear his complaints, you're like, yeah, it makes sense because like so much of we have like so much media out there now that
yeah.
so much of it is just garbage and it's not interesting and it feels like it's all for the same vague imaginary audience
Mhm.
that doesn't really I don't know that doesn't really exist, at least in my world it doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I mean, in the sake of like, so like, I mean, I grew up like let's tackle, I guess, like the Marvel films, which are
Yeah.
probably the main culprit.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, like I was saying, like it was kind of a weird thing because I was raised on the kind of like more Silver Age, some Golden Age, like comics of like basically my father's teenage years. Uh, back like when Jack Kirby and Ditko were like kicking ass, and like
Yeah.
just like the Fantastic Four and stuff like that. And I live in constant fear of what's next for the Marvel because it's like with every film, what they've achieved is admirable from a business standpoint, and there's a lot of cool stuff. Like I was a fanboy and like I stand up and cheer, but it's become so like homogenized in the face of just like even the way they're shot, like the lack of like imagination, where it's like shouldn't these all feel like different in like the way that they look, and like it's like you looked at a comic, like you pick up like Venom, and then you pick up like like a Superman or something. Like they shouldn't have like the same grim dark vibe and be shot the same way. And like I know that was like a really, I don't know, not the best comparison, but I don't know. It's just I've been yearning for like more original, like crazy, just weird, out there stuff, like from not just like the surface levels, the direction, but also like where the plots go, in
Mhm.
terms of what are they really asking and things like that. And I'll bring something up here which I would love to bounce off you. I don't know how like
Mhm.
into this world you are, but it was something I was discussing um, with a friend of mine, and she was telling me that like she had gone down this kind of deep dive analyzing the Marvel movies, and specifically what's really interesting, and this might speak to heroes on a larger scale, but it seems that like every villain in like the Marvel movies, they always want to change the world. They want to make a change.
Okay.
Now that in and of itself arguably isn't the worst thing, and sometimes the movies try to go to lengths, the better ones, where you can actually see the villain's point of view.
Mhm.
Um, However, they always go a little too far to make sure that the audience doesn't completely root for them by making them a mass murderer or something like that.
Mhm.
But what I find really interesting is that if you zoom out and look at like the superhero films, the Marvel films from that lens, all the heroes are basically policing and maintaining the status quo. Like that, it's like
Mhm.
no one will question it. You can't change the world. Although the movie that was like the most, maybe not the most poorly received, but I know the Avengers movie that probably did the least well was the Ultron movie, Age of Ultron. And in that movie, yes, they create Ultron, which is essentially Skynet, and that's not good. But
Mhm.
what is kind of funny is that that is the one film where our main hero, Tony Stark, through the Marvel universe, he's the one who's like, I want to change the world. And immediately everyone's like, no, 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 no. Like our hero, our basically like, inventor,
Uh-huh.
savior, like guy who's been there from the start. He is just like one hair away from being the villain, essentially. And
Mhm.
I bring all this up. I go on this little tangent. It's not really my own thought process. This was what my friend shared with me, and like it was really cool. But it
Mhm.
just got me thinking, like all movies from like heroes to villains in not just the Marvel movies, but most blockbuster films coming out today is it's always this black and white thing of the nuance is just kind of like dissipated. It's just kind of gone. And it's like I know I'm overgeneralizing, but it's like the
Mhm.
villains are always just like not even like they don't some of them don't even go like horribly far, but they're just like I've suffered a lot and I'd like to implement one change, and then the heroes just like cops show up and beat them the fuck out, it's like when you think about that, like it's just a very interesting thing. I had never looked at the movies that way from,
Mhm.
and I know not all the comics are like that, but it's just an interesting thing to think about existentially, where it's like, yeah, like if you're the guy who like has a new idea, you're going to be looked at as the villain, is what these movies are saying. Like, even though they're mostly mass murderers or like galactic
Mhm.
conquerors. I don't know. It's interesting to me.
Do you watch the Critical Drinker on YouTube?
I don't think I do.
Okay. He has a
No.
really good analysis of modern movies that I actually just watched this morning,
Mm.
and it was about why do modern movies suck. And his argument was is that they can't write male characters. You can't write a male character now without shitting on them in some way.
Mm.
As opposed to like if you go back like 20 years, there's this idea of like the stoic man who's like
Mm.
not reacting emotionally to the situation or whatever, and he makes the argument that today it's kind of like the inverse. Like how many things do you see in media where it's the man is just portrayed as an idiot, and I feel like that's kind of connected with the hero and the villain thing, right?
Mm.
Like
It's
our
it's
hero,
yeah.
our heroes aren't really like they're not really heroes if they're maintaining the status quo. I thought the whole thing with the hero was like they're standing up
Yeah.
against against the status quo in a way.
Yeah, like I mean, it's like where are the heroes who like are thinking, I guess, in the sense of like,
Mhm.
not like God, I like it's a slippery slope in terms of like the
Yeah.
pretentiousness or like, where are all the alpha males and the giga
Right.
chads? Because that is not at all what I'm saying. It's just like there's just something kind of missing in terms of like growth because I feel like what happens sometimes with a lot of Marvel movies or modern blockbusters, like again, there's still plenty of amazing independent and other films coming out, even some films that are backed by major studios coming out that are great. Like I'm not overgeneralizing, but for the sake of this argument, just reining it into the Marvel movies, it just seems like, yeah, like it just seems like our heroes are, yeah, like you said, just I don't know, they're just yeah, they're just cops essentially, like and they're just I don't know,
They've been
yeah.
at one point they were kind of like
Hmm.
these very strong creative expressions, and now they just feel like they've been commoditized. Like even if you compare the Marvel movies
Yeah.
come out today compared to like the original X-Men movies. The original X-Men movies were
Hmm.
they were so good because you saw that there was like internal conflict in each one of these characters and how they all related to one another. And it doesn't really seem like that's carried over into the movies now.
Yeah, like I mean, yeah, I think I'm much more fascinated by and would if you ask me like, hey, like, are you gonna rewatch Thor 2 or Ant-Man or whatever? I'm gonna be like, no, I'm probably never gonna rewatch that in my life. But those X-Men movies, yeah, like despite them not being perfect, like you said, there are cool things going on where it's a much more fascinating movie where it's like the heroes themselves and the X-Men themselves represent people who are oppressed, and I think through like history and like civil rights movements, that is what makes X-Men really really cool. And that's another thing I kind of like I'm worried about. Like I hope they don't fumble the ball there. For my money, if you're gonna do
Mhm.
X-Men, acknowledge completely like the best comics, in my humble opinion. It is a soap opera. It is a complete soap opera.
Mhm.
And these characters are bombastic and they have outfits that represent who they are, like as symbolism for the civil rights movements of all kinds, LGBTQ. Like they are bombastic, like flamboyant and like out there characters.
Mhm.
This is me like just harboring on the design, but I'm so tired of just the black leather uninspired like, drain
Yeah.
skits. Like, I'm sorry, it's like look at like a like just like a John Byrne like Jim Lee comic of just like you see the whole cast like Wolverine like that 90s X-Men look is just like this is awesome. It's just
Yeah.
I just want to see a bit more of that. That's on my selfish. I want to see the visual side of things, but
Yeah.
in terms of the character, yeah, it's like these characters have conflict and interrelations, and the world is against them. So,
Mhm.
the world being against them, to our earlier discussion of, like you're the villain if you want to change the world. Um, and what's interesting there is that both Charles's side of things of like humans and mutants working together. He's trying to change the world. He's villainized.
Hmm.
Magneto
Hmm.
trying to change the world, trying to kill the humans, but got like some good points. Also vilified, but he's doing the more evil thing. Like again, I'm not trying to make the case where it's like anyone who wants to like break a few eggs to make an omelet, anyone who wants to like kill a few to save billions, that whole like Ozymandias Watchmen thing. I'm not really trying to tackle that, but I'm
Right.
just saying like like I think maybe the bigger problem is that a status quo like a list of like check
Hmm.
marks and boxes need to be filled out. And what always happens is we need a third act giant fight. It has to happen. So a lot of times it gets shoehorned. Like, did you see like the first Wonder Woman movie? Remember when that came?
No.
You didn't see? Okay. Well, then this isn't really. I mean, I don't know if you care about spoilers, but um, I will keep it brief and I will spoil. Sorry, everyone out there who didn't see Wonder Woman. Um, Basically the whole film has this very interesting at first internal conflict where Wonder Woman, she's an Amazon, she's from the island of like women warriors, and World War I is happening, and you know she was taught her whole life like, oh, Ares, the god of war, is the only reason men fight in wars. It's the only reason there's evil in man's heart. And she goes on this entire journey till the very end, and she kills someone who she thinks is Ares, who's just like I don't know, like some head like German officer or something. And this movie, for a moment, I thought was going to about to be the most nuanced, surprising thing ever, because she kills him and the war's still going and everyone's still killing each other because it's World War I. And she's like, but why would man do this? Like to oversimplify it. And I forget Steve, the pilot, like I don't, her love interest, like sorry, I forget. Um, like kind of like looks at her and is just like, it's just this kind of almost poignant moment where it's like, is man inherently evil? Is just realized by this hero who
Hmm.
is just looking at all the carnage, and I was like, that's amazing. This movie's actually challenging the hero and our thoughts of like how we want to as human beings to simplify things and put things in boxes and just be like, oh, there's one big bad, blow up the Death Star, kill the Emperor, like that'll help, that'll save the world. And it's amazing for like 2 seconds because the movie has you think that's what it's going to be, she'll have to live with the real horrors of man, and can she accept that and still love man with
Hmm.
flaws. I was like, wow, I did not expect that. And shame on me because literally seconds later, this guy who you was introduced like for 5 seconds, like towards the beginning of the movie,
Hmm.
waltzes onto the field and is like, I'm actually Ares, the god of war. And they have this big CGI fight. And I'm like, what the like are you doing? Because it was like so poignant for like 2 seconds.
Hmm.
The whole movie was building to, like if like, and they're not gonna have like a movie about like, oh yeah, like the last like 20 minutes of Wonder Woman is her like just having this like shell shock like about the horrors of man. I was like, wow, that would have been awesome and
Hmm.
off guard. But no, they had to force this like, okay, she's been beating up human beings for the whole movie. We need to have her fight someone on equal footing. And it was embarrassing to say the least. And yeah, that's yeah, like I didn't intend for this whole thing to be about my qualms with Marvel films, and there's plenty of other great movies out there, and even a few comic book style and superhero movies that slip through the cracks that are great. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's just like the formulaicness of it on a these people, all these people who work on these films are talented and are hardworking, and I as like an animator in the industry, I would never shit on those key individuals, but it's just the fact that it comes down to numbers and it comes down to like
Hmm.
what is proven and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. I just thank you for allowing me a little tirade, but yeah, we can move on from that if you want.
So whenever your distaste for this kind of like formulaic storytelling, how is that influencing you in terms of the stuff it is that you do in
I
your day
mean,
to day? I mean, like, are you pretty particular about the projects that you work on? Do you work on commercial projects? Do you work on just your personal stuff?
so at the moment, I am in between gigs. And yeah, I am open for work, but I have been specking into really just growing. Um, it's kind of like one hand will wash the other,
Yeah.
so to speak. So to rewind a bit, I worked on a show, Bird Girl, for Adult Swim. It's a follow-up show to Harvey Birdman, which was one of my favorite shows on Adult Swim. I'm actually wearing the sweatshirt right now that they sent me in the mail, which is
Nice.
really cool. And they were wonderful to work with. And yeah, so after that, um, or like before I had gotten that job, I had a bit of imposter syndrome in the sense that I was given the like I still had to like do a test, I still had to earn it, but I felt terrible that like I didn't have to seek it out, like in terms of like apply and job hunt, which I was doing, but this job kind of came to me. They found me and they were like, as you found me on Instagram, which I'm very grateful for. And they were like, hey, we like what you do. We think, yeah, like please, like come work. And I was like, this is incredible. Thank you. And I had to kind of convince myself that I did earn it, but I earned it by taking the riskier route, which was just like spec everything into Instagram, and then like that's where I've just been putting like all my stuff, um because
So
it was just like, you know if you build it they will come kind of logic of like, yeah, like eventually someone will notice. And I thought for a second it's like, wow, that's like only been exclusive to me because I was stupid. But I started talking to other people in the industry that I admired, and I was like, I saw that they had indie projects, like their own little shows, or comics and stuff like that, but they had like this impressive resume under their belt of like directing on stuff. Uh, and I just emailed them because, here's something for anyone listening out there as well. 9 times out of 10, if you just like message someone and just ask them like, hey, like, you know, you did for me, I just want to bend your ear. I think most of us, it's like a really small world. And it's like, yes, there are assholes in any industry and whatever, but I think most people are willing to, just totally just spill the beans. Like, and, just like, people do
Mhm.
love to talk about themselves, but
Mhm.
yeah, like, they all kind of told me the same thing where it's like, all their stories kind of blend together where it's like, yeah, I was just in between jobs, I was working gigs, I was trying to get like freelance work, and in the meantime, it's just throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like, I just did something and eventually it caught the right person's eye, and then one thing was added to my belt, and then something led to another, and sometimes it would be years go by, and then sometimes it would just be bam 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 bam. So, um your base question was like, when I think about all this, how does it affect my work? Just to preface all that, I basically have been wrestling with and deciding to, at the moment, spec into my own stuff, which definitely, you know, like, it's weird because I'm going to sound like a hypocrite to what I was saying, but I believe you need to kind of ride the zeitgeist, to amass the following and to
Mhm.
do a lot of the people pleasing stuff, and try
Mhm.
to make it yours as much as possible so that
Mhm.
you can then, hopefully, one hand will wash the other, be able to fund the passion projects you actually want to do, the stuff that's personal to you.
Mhm.
Because like for me right now, I drew something as a joke. There's this show called Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, which is a hilarious horror adult version of like a Sesame Street or Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of thing. You gotta check it out. It's so funny, and it has this insanely huge fan base, which I am a fan of. But like, I wouldn't consider myself like in the trenches of like, living and breathing this stuff. But I just drew one time lapse drawing. It's on my Instagram, and someone commented, "Don't thug me, I'm scared," which I thought was hilarious because I drew them with guns. And it was just simple as that. I just drew these like puppets with guns, and people were like losing their minds because I also put an MF Doom track to it. Rest in peace.
Uh,
And I was like, this is getting. It's because you don't realize when it's happening, like unless you like. Because I was like, yeah, I just did that for shits. Like like at the same time, you could see it on my feed. I finished like just making a comic just for fun, like a comic that I had started 3 years ago. Put it up for free on my Patreon. I'm like, hey guys, I made a comic, and it's no one. I'm not on my soapbox like being angry, but it's like logistically, no one really cared because it's like you're demanding someone go through a loop, which is like as simple as clicking a link to get to another link to then read your comic that, not to be harsh, but to be brutally honest, it's like, yeah, no one really cares about it because it's like they don't know it and it's like they'd rather see you draw the things that they like. So,
mhm.
um, you just kind of have to realize like, okay, well, it's like I don't need to stop doing this other thing. It feeds my soul. I love doing it. I love these personal projects, but um I just realized it's like, look, it would be a waste of an opportunity if I just didn't do a little thing here, so that I can have my cake and eat it too. Where it's like, I basically split my time where it's like, okay, do something that's riding the zeitgeist, and then do something that is more of a personal thing that you hope mathematically a lot of people will like, but probably just won't as much,
Mhm.
and then like try to get a job to pay the bills and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So basically, with the "Don't Thug Me, I'm Scared" thing, um, I'm just making like a full like little music video out of it, which I've posted like progress clips on my feed, and they've just blown up like every time. And I'm like, well, awesome, because it's like I'm not gonna be able to monetize this in any way, but hopefully someone will see it and be like, that's sick. I want you to do my music video, or that's cool. Like, let me hire you. So I truly believe in this world that we live in, especially the Instagram, like TikTok viral world, as hollow as it can feel to like chase that and like just always be making stuff like that. The answer is don't always be making stuff like that. Like try to diversify your time. And it's not about like do you have more integrity than someone else? Like, oh, you're a sellout. It's just like, well, no, I mean, I'm not making any money off this. It's just for fun. And if people love it and it leads to something, hell yeah. But that's just been my philosophy. Just make fleeting fun things for the
Mhm.
zeitgeist, because people's attention spans are like 2 seconds long now. We're all like in chimp mode.
Yeah.
That's just like firmly what I believe. Like TikTok has kind of ruined like the
Yeah.
human attention span. Like I try to get like some friends like I mentioned earlier, like I love Lawrence of Arabia, I love like 2001, and I love all these like film bro like older movies, which
Yeah.
like, people love, but like it's like no one's gonna want to watch that. It's like fucking boring as hell to them. It's just like
Mhm.
I love longer form media and stuff that can breathe and take its time and be weird, which yeah, like Aeon Flux and Samurai Jack and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, it is all connected. But yeah, to answer your base question, um, and I promised there would be rants. But to answer your base question, yeah, like I do the thing, ride the zeitgeist that in hopes will eventually feed the machine of getting me another opportunity.
Mhm.
And it did pay off here and there, and I think exponentially it will only continue to. Um, but yeah, it's still risky because it's like yeah, like the time it takes me to do this stuff is time that I'm not getting paid to like work on a show or something. So,
Mhm.
but I do want to grow my YouTube and socials for the purpose of eventually being able to fund or pursue more personal stuff. But yeah, like that's my way of I think cracking it, and you know, uh, yeah, it doesn't have to be about like completely selling your integrity or selling your soul, but just being honest with yourself and being like, no one at this moment is going to care about my original thing unless you kind of amass enough of a reason for people to do that.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's just what I've seen.
Yeah, you definitely have to aim it at a specific crowd. Like
Mm,
if you have an actual community that you can aim it at,
yeah.
then you can be a little bit more successful with it. Yeah, I started doing. I haven't really released a whole lot of it, but I'm doing a comic book on Philip K. Dick.
Oh,
Some of
hell yeah.
his short stories. I'm taking some of them and turning them into comics, and I guess that would be a good example of like aiming for a specific crowd because there's hardcore Philip K. Dick fans out there. There's communities out there to market it to.
Mm,
So you said so from talking with like directors
mhm.
and different people that are in like more, I guess you could say, secure positions.
Yeah,
Um,
like
they all kind of have the same story of like kind of doing the personal project,
mm,
which gets them the job, personal
yeah,
project, job.
kind of. Yeah, it's like there's no one way to get to whatever the top is, but it's basically like everyone. You're never done. Essentially, is
Yeah.
what I'm kind of finding because it's like all glory is kind of fleeting, so you got to like really take
Mhm.
advantage of opportunities. But like I spoke to Aaron Long, who has been doing this web show called Sublo and Tangy Mustard. It's this little indie thing that he's been doing for years with some of his friends, and he just animates it himself. They voice it, um, and yeah, he does really well on YouTube, and he's got enough followers that give him a nice chunk of change on Patreon to at least cover a good little chunk of rent and some bills and stuff like that. It's not enough to like live off of, but definitely awesome. But he spent years building that, and some of like his other stuff, including that, eventually got him a job at a company where he is stayed at, and then he impressed the right people, and then he became a director on BoJack Horseman and Tuca and Birdie, which is like fucking awesome because those are like huge shows. But then those ended, so now he still works for the company. He is just kind of, he's not like in trouble, but it's a little bit of like back to square one because it's like, well, he still has his side thing that people love, which is great. But he spent years building that, and then yeah, like impress the right people to move up the ladder. But yeah, like I mean, I can't speak for everyone because I'm sure plenty of people did do the conventional route of like I will climb up the pipeline, but more and more from what I'm seeing. So I will actually get into something that I haven't really talked about, but I definitely I can talk about it publicly. I just I might omit some stuff, but anyway, um, so after Bird Girl, the little things that I was doing, like the little shorts, whatever, and mainly the numbers of the amount of followers I have on Instagram, which I'm very grateful for. Someone from 20th Century Fox noticed, and I was like, "Whoa!" And they messaged me, and they were like, "Hey, we'd love to talk." Um, and basically, yeah, one thing led to another, and they had asked me like, "Well, we're gearing up to make shows because of like the pandemic and like people need entertainment and like a lot of places have been gearing up to make animated shows in the face of really successful ones like Smiling Friends and other stuff. So they asked me if I wanted to pitch a show, and long story short, I my friend and I we made a show that we're very proud of. We made a really complete package. We thought it was funny because we made ourselves laugh with it, which is I really think something imperative, that a lot of people kind of forget. Where it's like sometimes you're watching a show because they wanted a comedy, they wanted an animated comedy, but like some shows, if you do watch them, not shitting on the writers, but sometimes it's like you can really tell they're writing things that they think are going to make people laugh versus making themselves laugh. And that was something that I was always stayed with me because my dad would show me like original like old Looney Tunes shows, and he told me a story where I forget who specifically, but whoever was working on Looney Tunes at the time, they were asked by reporters like, "Were you trying to make kids laugh or adults laugh?" And to paraphrase, they were like, "Fuck that. We were just trying to make ourselves laugh because we knew if we found it funny, other people would find it funny." And it's like that's why so much of Looney Tunes is like timeless and like gold, and like it's just these little like to me it's like, and I haven't seen this in so long, and it's not that like there's a million ways to do comedy. Um but like there are specific clips of Looney Tunes I can remember where you can get the biggest laugh out of Bugs just like looking right into the camera, like just like acknowledging that like the guy in front of him is like an idiot or something. Whereas shows today would have this like really obnoxious, like, you know, the kid would be like whining and like, you know, it's like, but dad, I want to do this. Like, oh geez, like, you know, and then like Family Guy shit, like, you know, it's just like the subtlety is gone. Like the less is more is gone. And that's a tirade in and of itself. And again, it sounds like I'm trying to make myself sound like I have all the answers and I'm so smart. No, I don't. I really don't. I'm just really passionate about this crap. But we made a show. We made an animat. Well, we didn't make a show, but we made a pitch for the show. We wrote out episodes. We fleshed out the world. And then my buddy and I, my co-creator, we spent basically the whole summer, last summer, creating a animatic of like basically like kind of a pilot, but more so a teaser for the whole show and how it would work. And we did a ton of work and we sent it in and they were like really impressed by the work we did. They thought it was funny. But I can't speak about it specifically, but they told me that they were making something already in the works that was similar to it. And I'm going to, I don't think I would get in trouble for this because I don't want to badmouth them. It was an incredible opportunity. They've been lovely, and the door is still open for me to pitch something else. So again, I'm not butthurt. It was incredible experience. Really, like I'm so grateful. It has boosted my self-esteem and everything else. But you know, they said no, and that was fine. That was expected at a certain level. And right now we're still trying to shop it around and see if we can do something with it. But when talking to a few other people in the industry, again, this was for Fox, who, we're familiar with all their animated content. Someone in the industry who was much more experienced than me kind of divulged to me. It's like, well, you didn't make it about a family. And I was like, what do you, so? And they're like, they're never going to take it if it's not about a family. And
wow.
it was just like something I thought about, or I was like, well, ever since The Simpsons, or the way that they explained it to me is that ever since The Simpsons and Simpsons Mania, it's like dysfunctional family is the only form of adult comedy. It's kind of what is saturated, where it's like Simpsons, King of the Hill, Bob's Burgers, Family Guy, The Cleveland Show, American Dad, Solar Opposites, on other networks, mainly Adult Swim's hugest, is that a word? I mean, biggest show, unquestionably, that like kind of took it from being the awesome underground niche, like avant-garde channel of television to basically being this show and maybe a few others, is Rick and Morty. And people will tell you that Rick and Morty is about Rick and Morty. And I'm like, no, it's about a family. It's about a dysfunctional family. If you watch the episode, it's, yes, Rick and Morty are the title characters. They're the two dudes being dudes having fun, but it's about the whole family. And you can argue that's also why Rick and Morty exploded, because it's like, I don't know what that says about the American condition or the human condition, but it's like people are after the dysfunctional family. And there's only a few things that are ever kind of swapped around here and there. Most of the time, the dad is a pseudo lovable idiot or asshole. Like it's either one or the other. Like the mom is the competent one who is holding the family together. You have the brat boy, Bart, or whoever else is equivalent, like from that to a nerd. Then you have the intellectual kid, and then you have the pet that can talk or something like that. Like and again, it's like if you just zoom out and look at it all, it's like, oh my god, yeah, that's it. You know, um, please, Fox, please consider still hiring me after I divulge all. Yeah. And again, it's not to shit on that. It's just that's the number game, and this is
Yeah.
all connected to that original question you asked me. But the reason they came to me is because they saw numbers, they saw engagement, and they were like, they saw, like, okay, whether or not they actually cared about like the fact that I have like a quote unquote specific style or whatever, they just see the numbers, and it's like it's I'm not trying to say they're all impersonal robots or something like that. No, but it's just that's what it is. They saw the numbers. I got an incredible boost up the ladder because of the Instagram numbers that got me in that room, so to speak. Whereas someone else might spend years on the pipeline and they might not have like the most like they might not have the best drawing skills or the most creative ideas or anything like that, but they are professionals and they're reliable. And that's another completely valid way of climbing up the ladder. However, it seems more and more those people are not going to be offered a show of their own, which is kind of the trap a lot of people might fall into, which is like, hey, like you might have this incredible idea, but there's no guarantee they're going to do it. You just have to look at it kind of robotically, like as like what were the executives looking at the time as like what was killing it, what was
Mhm.
appealing, like what spoke to the broadest generation. Because like, as much as I would love to go up there and pitch like, okay, here's my like, you know, post-apocalyptic world, and like the animation is going to be like Eon Flux, but it's going to have like darker writing that's more akin to like Sopranos or Better Call Saul, like like, and I could pitch
Mhm.
this like insanely like just like big thing. No one is gonna no one's gonna give it a chance because it's just it doesn't fit the what has worked before. It's too much of a risk. It's too much of a liability. Uh, so yeah.
So do you think that was getting the kind of numbers it is that you have on Instagram, was that a calculated thing? Like, I know you're doing these personal projects, but do you feel like
Yeah.
it was, you have an element of story in
Mhm.
the stuff it is that you're posting? I mean, obviously that gives somebody more of something to engage with rather than just like an individual image that doesn't have a greater context.
So if it was calculated, not at first, no. I jot that down to luck. And I mean, people will say talent, and that's a very nice thing for people to say, and I'm always flattered. But it's just something I spend hours doing,
Yeah.
and it's like I've committed a lot of my life to it. To get a little into the weeds of a bit of my backstory, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease when I was 12,
Mm.
which it's just a chronic condition, and it has affected a lot of not like my social life. I have wonderful friends and family, but like just like what I can. There's a lot I can't really commit to doing,
Mm.
and I am immunocompromised because of that, because of the treatment of it. Because Crohn's is an autoimmune disease. So when you have that, also in the pandemic, I
Mm.
live less so now. I'm still insanely cautious, but I basically lived in my room for
Mm.
like 3 years, whatever year we're on now. Um, and even before that, I kind of had this workaholic, you know, mindset because I don't know, I just kind of got it instilled in me that I'm kind of on borrowed time. Um, because my surgery when I was first diagnosed was like it was an emergency surgery. My appendix was about to explode, like really close to it. And then they also found that or in the surrounding small intestine, it had been infected with Crohn's, and so they ran the biopsy. So, I mean, from everyone I've met, I've had it. probably at the youngest age, which was really surprising.
Mhm.
Because most people get it a little later. But I had it since I was 12. So it kind of forces you to grow up a little bit more, but also it instills in you this like, or at least in me, like just like a, like not that I'm not a goofball and I don't like to have fun, but like just this kind of like I know what's important. I know when I want to go after it, like, and I want to just draw. Like I said before, it's my escape, but also like where I get to be a bit more alive. Because I can't go to like I just can't be as social like for a lot of reasons, and it's held me back there. So of course I'm going to spec into drawing and connecting to the world in that way because we're social creatures. But yeah, so you asked if it was calculated. I just invested a lot of time into it. Uh, as for is there a story? I mean, if you go through my stuff, a lot of it is just fleeting, funny
Mhm.
stuff where it's like, I'm like I made one comic that just cracks me up where like it's kind of like this Mobius level like line art, but the whole thing is about this guy pulling a knife on a guy taking a piss, and he's like, "Hey, piss boy," and the guy's like, "Oh shit!" Like just this stupid little comic, and I was just like, I just love kind of like really specking into like how can I use my art to evoke things from like heavy metal comics to like 50s comics to like the Silver Age, Golden Age, like 70s, 80s, um, to just play on that kind of familiarity that people have like with media, but make it funny, make it whatever, like make them laugh, make them cry, whatever. But yeah, I kind of answered this before, but it was like, yeah, to me, it's like make fleeting stuff that rides the zeitgeist is how you're going to maximize your numbers. And if now it's like if I can get it, if I can come up with the idea like, and I know that it's like, oh, this would only take me like a day to do, I'm so ecstatic about that. I'm so happy to do that because it's like before I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna make you know this 20-page comic or something, or like I've had ideas where it's like I want to make this like opus, this like 300-page graphic novel or this or that, and it's just like no, like this isn't the way right now for me. Like a lot of people could do it and like that's awesome, but to me tackling the smaller stuff and just getting it out there, whether it's like comics, like do a 5-page comic, master that. You get that down. Oh, okay, 5 is uneven. Okay, do a 6-page comic, and then
Mhm.
master that. Okay, you did that. Okay, do a 12-page one. Do a 24-page one. Like work your way up because in my method, my ideology there is that you are putting that stuff out. People are seeing it. You're making a portfolio as you go, which is awesome. And you're hopefully, improving too because you're your own worst critic and you're just like on yourself. Um, but yeah, to me it's like right now I'm starting to get into longer form stuff. Like I have some ideas for like video essays and stuff like that, which I don't inherently have a lot of video essay ideas or whatever, but to me, it's like that was another case of riding the zeitgeist where, like, if you go on YouTube and you look at video essays,
Mhm.
like some channels that had like 60 followers or whatever blow up because some guy just made a 10-minute video about his like opinion, like not even fact, but just like his opinion. Because I really believe a lot of people in this kind of like beautifully selfish way that we all are that no one wants to admit. Uh, my friend had said this where it's like, yeah, I'm guilty of going online and just finding my opinion. That's
Mhm.
all I want to
Mhm.
see. Like, because it's in all of us. It's like, whatever your heated views are on like, you know, whatever is currently out. It's like if you have a Star Wars opinion, like, dear God, like,
Mhm.
it's like one video essay, like, this is arguing for the opinion I don't have. I'm not gonna watch it. Oh, this one is reinforcing my own. Great. And it's like it's toxic. It's terrible. It's not how we should be. Um, and I do try to be as objective as possible. And I encourage those out there like take a chance and watch videos on stuff you either don't know about or like is not what you think, or not the opinion you share. Because I really believe that even though I guess I'm trying to become a part of it, what I'm never trying to do, and it is one of my fears, and I see it all the time, is that there's this weird celebrity that starts to happen with YouTubers and internet personalities where someone will just post something as an opinion and people will take it in as law to copy and paste it and create these giant flame wars. And we got to stop worshiping YouTubers, people, whatever. And this even happened to me in a microcosm. I had drawn way before the new Doctor Strange had come out or whatever. It's somewhere on my Instagram feed, but it was probably like the most like flame war-y like I had ever done because I expressed just kind of an opinion. I drew a version of like Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, kind of emulating like, because it's like I love my dad's Fantastic Four. That's where I'm coming from. I drew him and I'm like, this is what Reed Richards should look like. And then I drew oh my god, I don't even remember his name. Whoever plays Jim from The Office, the guy who
I can't remember. I'm really bad at names. I know what you're talking about.
It's gonna come. He who played him in the new Doctor Strange as like a cool little cameo. It's not set in stone if he's going to be the new one. My god, this is going to bother me. I think there's a B in his name. Anyway, basically, so Jim from The Office. I just said like, Mr. Fantastic looks like he was carved out of wood, and he looks like this kind of guy who they don't make anymore. And he's not Jim from The Office. And that's it. That was just me weighing in a cheeky little way, just as like a funny, like, this is my opinion. And people took it as law, and I got all these guys who came out of the woodwork who were probably like, in their 40s to 60s being like, yeah, like, this is Kirby's, this is Stanley's Fantastic Four, like, just going insane. And then some people, rightfully so, just like express your opinion, being like, it's like, like, fuck you, like, he's gonna be great, like, it's like, what have you done? And I'm just like, so that's something I'm trying to avoid, but at a certain point you just can't, because what you kind of realize is because of the numbers you bring in, because of the people who follow you, because we're social creatures, your post just becomes a battlefield or breeding ground for people to communicate, because it's just like, yeah, that's what's going to happen. And you got to be okay with that if you're doing this. Like, the only way to win is not to play. So like, I just didn't really talk to anyone. I just let them fight it out. Not that I'm like holier than that, but I'm just like, I got fucking better things to do. Like, like, cool. Like, yeah.
And then when the dust settles, just ban all the people you don't agree with, and then there you go.
Well, that's the other thing with social media, man. It's just like, there's so many like narcissists out there who like will never have to grow because they can just ban people as much as they like. I see it all the time. And it's just like,
I think it's been proven at this point that social media is like encouraging the more sociopathic, narcissistic elements of ourselves a little bit. It's
scary.
Do you okay? So whenever you say ride the zeitgeist, like, in what you're saying is basically like you're drawing the stuff it is that is like popular out there right now, like the Marvel
popular
stuff.
right now. Yeah, I draw plenty of stuff that I just want to feel like drawing, or like stuff that isn't popular right now, like maybe like older comic book stuff, or just my own stuff. But I'm mainly a character artist and animator. I should work on backgrounds. I should learn how to draw a car. But that's what I mainly do. But that's what I mean. Yeah, I mean, like, sorry.
Do you find freelance gigs coming to you from doing stuff that's like that, or do you find like does that help push people to the print shop? Which, by the way, I saw the Sonic "I'm Tired of Running." It's so hilarious. I love that picture.
Thank you so much. Well, they say great artists steal. That is actually, I looked at a picture of. So I love the show AMC's Mad Men back when it was on the air, and that was like a frame essentially of the main character, just like when he's going through like one of his most existential, like hates himself kind of moments. He's just like, I'm tired of running, and I just was like, yeah, I'm just gonna draw this is Sonic, and that's what I mean. Just make yourself laugh. But I'm sorry. Before that, which thank you by
Okay.
the way. What was your question?
So does doing the character
Yeah.
portraits and stuff that you do, does that bring you any kind of like just like small little freelance illustration gigs, or is that
Some commissions, yeah. Not I am not like, and I'm just saying this honestly. It's like I'm so grateful for the following I have, but I'm not swimming in it by any means. No, like it's like, because here's the thing. Like I have 19.5 something like that's incredible. That's insane. I'm super grateful, but I watch my stories or whatever and it shows you how many people see them. Like at most like only like 200 people will like even engage on that level. Um a lot of them are people I know. And so it's just like it's because it's also like people are like doom scrolling
yeah?
just through the feed and like and like even getting a like, it's like I'm guilty of it too. I've done it before where it's like I'll see something that I actually do think is cool, but I'll just like forget to like it or send it or do anything with it. I'll just be like, "Oh, cool. Bye-bye." Like, I'll just like, and it's not out of like being like arrogant or a dipshit, but it's just like yeah, I don't blame people, but yeah, like it doesn't actually pull in the numbers you think. And even like on my Patreon, it's like I'm very grateful to the like 6 patrons I have, but it's really, it's not a lot. Like my goal honestly would just be like if through like reels and Patreon and YouTube, like it sucks because I was talking about this with another art friend of mine. It's like everything I've been talking about tonight, I'm making it sound like I'm championing this stuff. I really want to make it clear. It's like, as grateful as I am for these opportunities, I'm kind of approaching this like a business. It's like math. It's just like here are the avenues you can do. Like on YouTube, it's like you need 1,000 subscribers at least, and like a pretty high number of like hours watched.
Hmm.
Um, so it's like I don't know when I'm gonna get there, which is why I was like, well, okay, I can make a video essay and I can make it about something that I like, which I know other people like, and so that's gonna get a lot of clicks and that's gonna get a lot of traffic. And a video essay is naturally going to be longer than what I spend months on doing a short animation, like if it's like a minute long or something, like, and so that's gonna rack up at least hours. And then another thing, which similar to what you're doing, is like the kind of drawcast thing that we had spoken about I think before we start recording, but yeah, of just like just two people sitting talking and drawing or whatever, because people like to have the company too, a company where it's like it's like when sometimes you just put the TV on just to feel like there's a presence or something like that. Like it's a podcast. It's I just had this thought the other day, and this is stupid, sorry to derail it, but I can't believe it took me this long to like realize that as a kid, like AM radio is the most boring thing on earth. Like, it's like you don't want to listen to like people talking. But now it's all AM radio. That's what podcasts and like this stuff is. It's just all AM radio. And I don't know, it was just a funny little thought. I
Hmm.
didn't realize. Like I was just like, wow. Um, but yeah, I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. Where was that?
Um, yeah. So this
Mhm.
this whole thing to you is like a business. You're approaching it that way. You're looking at it from the point of view of YouTube.
Right. Sorry. Yeah. So I am in a business mindset
Mhm.
because that is what you have to treat it as if you want to make it as like a side income to then lead into your main gig.
Yeah.
Um like when I say that, I don't mean that, and I'm not even afraid like of this, but like it's not that I'm like this cold thing that's like abandoned all my integrity. It's like no, I want like what motivates me is like doing all this to get to a point where I can make, or like you can make your comic, like no one
Yeah.
else is, like your video, your short, your web show, your movie, your whatever. Like this is just the most strategic way to get there for me. And sometimes I really hate that 90% of my hand and time is devoted to making stuff that more so is about raking up the numbers than it is feeding my soul. But that is the nature of like being an artist in our time. Like at least not all artists, like, but just in our, I think, specific bubble of like the illustrator, animator, freelancer, um,
Mhm.
who has dreams, as it were. Like, like if you and I didn't have like passion projects or dreams, like we'd be like machines. We'd be killing it. We'd probably be like, working, just doing constant stuff
Mhm.
for like commercial work and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's awesome if you have it. But I just like I knew like in college, like I could have worked or I could work on motion graphics and stuff like for commercial stuff, like graphic design type animated things, like that kind of like just computer based like vector animation stuff like that. And I hate it and I never
Yeah.
want to do it. So I'm not going to do it. And it's like my so it's weird. It's like basically I guess I'm just making the argument of like never lose your integrity. But if you want to like kind of move up a little, look at what's popular, and if you have something funny to do with it, a joke, like think of like a Sunday cartoon or like a New Yorker thing or just like some parody thing. Yeah, just do that, because like that's the stuff that people love to consume and share.
Mhm.
Like it is trying to make people like make them laugh, make them cry, but trying to make people cry to make them feel like those heavier emotions. It's like tougher. It's
Yeah.
it's hard, and it's no one wants to really be more bummed out unless you make something that's so beautifully poignant or whatever. But yeah, I know I'm going on a tangent. So
No, it's all
yeah,
good, man.
I don't
I,
know.
th- I think that's I think that's a good way. I think that's a good way to end it. Where would you like to send people in terms of your social media? Like you have your Rude Jack art on Instagram. What else do you have?
I mean, that is the main one, and the link in my bio from there leads to everywhere else. I mean, yeah, like again, like I'm very grateful, as anyone is who has a Patreon, to be like, hey, if you want to support me, go on my Patreon. But it's like, yeah, it's like, what reason do you have to? Maybe nothing yet, but so like, just be honest with yourself. But if you want to, it's very nice of you. I do have a Patreon, but mainly, yeah, like I have a YouTube I'm trying to build. But basically, yeah, like everything I do, all this side stuff, I guess it's like the last like kind of footnote I haven't mentioned, but once I get a gig that will take
Mhm.
up like months or whatever, all this stuff gets paused. It gets put on the back burner anyway. So it's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
it is kind of that danger of like I don't want to make promises I can't keep.
Yeah.
So when I do put things out, like right now I'm just specking completely into that. But if you get whatever gig, yeah, you're gonna get that gig. So I try not to like super sell myself, because I'm like, I'm not trying to like get people to like, completely invest in me, because it's like I could be gone like in a month or so. Like, just I'm not, you know, open for commissions or whatever else. But
Yeah.
uh I don't know, that was just like the last thought of clearing my name for this whole thing. Uh but yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, no, my Instagram, YouTube. I mean, I'm Rude Jack Art on everything, so it's pretty easy to just find me. But yeah, thank you so much for talking, man.
Yeah.
And
Thank you. Thank you
I
for taking the time.
yeah,
We're on opposite sides of the world, so it took a little while for us to figure out how we were going to do this.
yeah, no, thank you for waking up. Um, but yeah, and I thank you for giving me a place to just rant. I graciously apologize though that I didn't really give you enough time to try.
It's all good, man.
But Yeah.
All good. All right. For myself, you can find me at Wesley Edwards Art on Instagram and on YouTube, and then obviously my main website here down at the bottom. I'm actually going to be doing some video essay type stuff similar to what you were talking about
Nice.
here in the future. So you can stay tuned to that on this channel. And thanks for everybody who checked it out. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now, and then we'll still talk for a little bit. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.